Good evening and welcome to the yet another Shitalath Conversation Sunday evening 7 p.m. IST show. A show which is romanticizing like those bioscopes, infatuating bioscopes we all must have witnessed during our childhood days, especially in 60s and 70s, people born in 60s and 70s, uh, that ushered our followers and admirers into this gigantic and placid pool of memoirs of bygone times. Here, the pendulum of time at Shitanath Conversations seems to still into a movement where time and space they merge into each other, and this is a treasure trove. Probably, ambling through the decades of time, ambling through the centuries, ambling through the millennia, and this wonderful program probably touches it is fragrant, and it is meandering and astounding into this wonderful spectrum uh, of the serene freshness, through intellectual stimulation, through honest anecdotes, first-hand encounter anecdotes, and through lucid originality, uh, by none other than the very prominent people, very elevated people, the illustrious people from the public life, who take us back into the legacy, into the era, into the romanticism, into the this the entire scenic of the past, the bygone past, the resonances of bygone past, of a wonderful land that's known as Kashmir, the cradle, cathedral, and crown of India, nestled in the majestic Himalayan lap, the great Himalayan lap, the towering Himalayas, the inspiring Himalayas. It is which is witness to this entire flow of civilization around in our land. So I think these 54 episodes, which we have ambled through, these landmarks which we have ambled through till now, have been able to give us this wonderful mosaic, wonderful, the rainbow, the hues of colors in forms of the wonderful stories about the culture, about the tradition, about the legacy, about the ancient sciences, about the men and matters, about the flora and fauna, about the stories, about the excursions, about the bonhomie, about the brotherhood. So thank you once again. I'm indebted to all of you to joining and gluing into today's program. And this is a great, wonderful occasion to meet on every Sunday. एक खेल है औरंग सुलेमा मेरे नज़दीक, एक खेल है औरंग सुलेमा मेरे नज़दीक, एक बात है एजाज मसीह, एक बात है एजाज मसीहा मेरे आगे. So with that wonderful couplet of Ghalib, I would like to say that today we are having a conversation with a very esteemed personality, the first women civil servant from Kashmir, who, after qualifying civil services, became an IS officer, served for a small point of time, and then suddenly abandoned everything to go to United States of America with her husband to probably, as I perceive, uh, to serve the family, serve the husband, and live a very happy life. This seems to be a very rare example, but then again, this is the truth. Uh, 1970 batch IS officer, first Kashmiri woman from to qualify IS civil services examination. Mrs. Sudha Koul is a multifaceted personality. She is an author of eminence and a painter. Her paintings are very nourishing. They are very evocative, and she is a social activist who lives with her husband and the family at the Princeton, New Jersey, America. We'll be crisscrossing this entire discussion through the finer nuances of her personality, her reminiscences about the Kashmir, where she was born and raised, and we'll also talk about her wonderful books she has authored, Curries Without Worries, Come With Me to India, and also, one of her finest book and most popular book, most acclaimed book, that is The Tiger Ladies, a Memoir of Kashmir. And she has also a wonderful painting series of painting we'll be talking about, that is about the Pundits at Nightfall, and other paintings as well. And we are also going to talk about her family in the United States, her social life, and also the basic, one of the most illustrious thing which she has done, for which she is famous. I mean, qualifying this IAS examinations in India. So it will be a wonderful, enchanting experience for all of us. So without much delay, I would like to say that let's all welcome with great reverence, great affection, and great respects, Mrs. Sudha Koul, to the Shitalath Conversation studio. Uh, Namaskar,
Namaskar.
ma'am. Namaskar, ma'am. You are welcome into the 55th Shitalath Conversation show. It's a great delight to have you on our show. How you are at Princeton? Probably it's the morning that I'm there. It's the evening
It's
here.
it's morning here. It's about 9:30, and thank you so much for inviting me to the Sheetal Nath Conversations. I love your format and I love your principles. You know that you really, it's a nostalgia trip to our beloved valley that we all
Yeah.
love so dearly, and to catch up on all the, if we were still there, we would hear all these stories from each other. But since everyone is so scattered, this is a very good forum for people to come and, narrate how they lived. And so I'm really honored to be on this show. Yes.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Your book Tiger Lady reminds me that I am today talking also to a tiger lady, and there's a great saying of a wonderful poetess, Maya Angelou, from the American poetess, who says
Yes.
that I am the woman, phenomenal woman. That's what I am.
Yes.
So it is really a great delight and joy to have a personality of your multiple shades into our show. And people really have many questions, because when we put your this thing in promo, I just found n number of questions. Most of them are asking about why did she shift from one IAS and then left. But that question will come later on. First of
Mm.
all, because of the format of the program, before we talk about your interaction with your own self and creating the literature, you are a great prose writer, and then also the paintings, the wonderful paintings, nourishing paintings you do, and also your social life over there, life in America. First of all, let's go and jog down to the reminiscence, jog down with you to your childhood, fly on those streets, go to your family, see what your family was all about, where did you live, what was your surroundings all about, and who are the people who influenced your lives, where were the institutions you read, how was the ecology, socio-cultural ecology, how was the landscape, how was the color, and how was the times, bonhomie, and all other aspects. I have heard that your grandfather was a great professor, man of English literature, and your aunt is also Nirja Maturi, who was also into this program. She's also an English professor of English literature. And then your father was from the army background. Maybe probably your this multifarious backgrounds. These things might have helped you to develop a particular personality. That's why you are very different from the rest of the others. But let's all listen to you, and let's all fly with you to your childhood and enjoy this entire look and gaze of romanticism of Kashmir.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And yes, I did have a very blessed childhood and youth growing up in my grandfather's house on Exchange Road. We had a very, we had a very, you know, what do you call it? It was a very special situation,
Okay.
where my grandfather's house was in the middle, and he, along with his friends, had, you know, some friends had come from, they were all in the inner city to begin with, and
Okay.
they had all, gone to Lahore for the degrees, and then they came back to Kashmir, and then they bought this place right next on Residency Road. They bought this
Okay.
tract of land, and they all built houses next door to each other virtually. So I was in the middle house with my grandfather, Professor Shamlal Dhar. Then
Um,
one house away was my maternal grandfather, Pandit Nilkant Bhatt, who was, uh, you know, um, he was a home secretary for a while. Then he was actually the Inspector General of Customs and Excise for the Maharaja's government. Then he was the Home Secretary, whatever. And these are all people who had gone and got their masters from Lahore. My maternal grandfather had a gold medal in economics. He got
what was
it.
his name? His name? Full
Pandit
name?
Nilkant Bhatt.
Acha Neelkant Bhatt, sir. Okay.
And so that was him. And then there was my grandfather, Professor Shamlal Dhar, who had taught uh, science, physics, and chemistry at SP College, but had a burning desire to study and teach English literature. So, believe it or not, even though he had a family and they all lived on Exchange Road, he just left everything and went off to Lahore and got his master's in English, and then got the reputation of being the finest professor of English that they had seen. Then on my
Brilliant.
left side, on the other side of the fence, was Pandit Jugal Koul, who was the principal of SP College. In front of us was the house of Mr. V.D. Zadu, who I believe was the first person from Kashmir to go to Harvard. He was
Are,
an
wow.
engineer. And then to his left was Mr. Bakshi, who I think was the Wazir Wazarat or something like that. And then on the right was one Mr. Ambardar, who also held a rather important position. So it was like a very
Highly
sacred
industry.
enclosure with all these very educated and I would say liberal kind of people who yet knew Persian and Urdu and Kashmiri
And English.
and English, of course. I mean, uh, English was the bread and butter for my grandfather and for Principal Call, who was also a professor of English and wrote several books,
Okay.
for students in English. So I was really blessed and very lucky to have all these people around me, and they were always encouraging. There was no never I was never told, oh, you can't do that because you're a girl or something, nothing of the sort, you know. And
Aspiring.
sorry.
Aspiring people, aspiring for the new
Yeah,
things.
very
And
inspiring and very what do you call it, encouraging. And then of course we were stones, literally 2 minutes walk from SP College and Women's College, where
right.
there were all kinds of plays in English, Urdu, and Kashmiri, and we never missed any of the plays or any of the concerts. It was a very rich life that
Um,
we had there, and a very safe and secure life we had. So that's what I would like to say. And then we were on Exchange Road, which was right in the heart of town. You know, and lot of coming and going. I used to actually, as a child, I would go over to my Matamal, which was one house away, and have a proper lunch at my house, and then go to my Matamal. And if they had something more interesting for lunch, I would have lunch again. you know. So it was just a very, very lucky, uh, way to grow up.
exchange. You explained about the wonderful ambience of the exchange road and the people, the prominent people around. So let's come back to your household, your father, your siblings. your childhood, how did you play with them? How was your father? What was your dialogue? Your father, your mother, your
I
grandfather.
had,
Any anecdote you would like to share?
well, let me just say this, that my grandfather and I and my aunt, we were soulmates. I had a lot more in common with their interests. My father was a brilliant army man who did very well. He was an engineer from BHU, and he
Oh,
was a typical army person. My mother was a very quiet, affectionate lady. But my mother came, although she was just one house away. My Matamal was a little bit more, I would say, conservative, perhaps, or they were not westernized that much, as was our
okay.
family. So I felt I was very close to my grandfather and my aunt, Mrs. Mattu, actually. So,
Okay.
and the conversations with my father, I must say that for my father, he knew that what kind of a person I was, because when he would be posted out somewhere here and there. When he came back, one year he brought me Treasure Island.
Treasure
He
Islands.
would bring
Oh,
back books, and Treasure
that's a good.
Island in an edition in which the illustrations were by N.C. Wyeth and Howard Pyle.
Good.
And those, I have to say, I brought this up because the illustrations, if you have ever seen the uh, illustrations in the original editions of Treasure Island, those
Okay.
paintings are riveting. And I think that, to be honest with you, I really think that that is what turned me on to painting.
That's so
The
wonderful.
paintings of Long John Silver, and then of course the other books, the Black Arrow. Also, we
Black
had
hair.
a library in my grandfather's house on Exchange Road. We had a library, one room that was committed. So did Principal Call next door. That had cupboards with glass panes, and that was full of books. So my father brought me that Treasure Island, and I will always remember that book. And he brought me other books also. He realized that I'm a bookish kind of a person, I suppose. Then he also is the one who, he didn't talk much. He was not one of those, very effusive people, but he also brought me, when I was very young, an introduction to sketching and drawing.
Are, wow.
And he gave it to me, and we never talked about it as such, but he knew something was going on in that direction with me, I suppose. You know.
Okay. That's so
So
wonderful. I mean, talking about those times, you had so much of assistance and so much of guidance. So in a way,
oh
you are
my
very
God,
much privileged. You are very much privileged.
very privileged, very lucky, to be honest with you. And then even uh, being in Srinagar at that time, there was, you know, so much love and affection between us. I mean, it was not only Bhattas meeting Bhattas, we were uh, lots of Muslim friends. We had my grandfather's, one of his dearest friends was the registrar of the university, Chasti Sahab, who
Okay.
would be, quite often I would find him on the front porch, and they would ask for tea, and tea would be sent to them. And, that kind of whole, that interaction of respect and affection that we had. And if I went, my grandfather was rather adventurous. When the first snowfall fell, he would say, "Come on, put your gum boots on. We are going to make the first tracks on the snow."
Are, wow.
So that was his attitude, And so, we would do that. And then we had hardly gone a few steps. Somebody would call up from behind and say, "Hey, Shamji Chuksa, kotsa chuga sanshi nasmat." That kind of. And very often it was a Muslim gentleman friend of my father's and of my grandfather's, So, and I studied at the Presentation Convent in Kashmir.
Yes, that was. I wanted to hear this presentation convent story a few times because there are senior people who studied in presentation convent, senior than you, and then
Uh,
much junior to you who came to my show. So I want the
oh,
presentation convent of your time, how different it was. Yeah, please.
it was beautiful. I mean, to be honest with you, having gone to the, I don't want to sound elitist, but having gone to the Presentation Convent and then later on gone to some of the top schools in England or here, there was nothing that we lacked. It was an amazing, first of all, the building was stunning. The nuns were so dedicated. You know, it was not only that they were teachers, they were very active socially. They would distribute food and dry milk to the Hanjis on the river that we had to cross every day. If we were not well, they would whisk us away and give us tea and that kind of stuff. So I went to the convent. I matriculated from the convent, and then went a, to women's college,
Oh,
where we
Maulana
had
Azad,
this
Maulana Azad Road,
real tiger lady of Kashmir, Principal
Mahmuda ji.
Mahmouda Ahmad Ali Shah, who was a force of nature, and joined the women's college and graduated from there. And then I think, I thought I'd go to Delhi University and get a master's in English. And then I found that they didn't accept you unless you were 19 years old.
Yes.
And I was only 17. And so my grandfather said, you can't just, why don't you go ahead and do an MA in the meanwhile, and then you can go. So I joined the university for my MA in political science.
Your
And then,
contemporary, your contemporaries in Presentation Convent and the teachers. I mean, was it more extracurricular activity or it was just all-round development? Like in Kashmir, we had these cross-country races, trackings.
oh yeah,
You know,
that the boys had more of that cross country and crew and swimming and all that. The nuns did have a pool, but they wanted us to be, actually, to be honest with you, they wanted to bring up ladies.
okay,
They were like they were like all these elite schools where, on the English model, where we had to learn our manners and we had to. But they, as far as I was
okay,
concerned, I didn't feel too badly because they had the most fabulous library there. It was called the Karan Singh Library, and
currency.
there was a huge portrait of Maharaja Karan Singh there. And I just devoured all the books to the point where I irritated my friends, who then would steal a march on me and go to the library 5 minutes before me and hide all the books of the author that I was reading at the time, just to teach me. If any of them are watching, they will know that for a certain time, my favorite writer was P.G. Wodehouse.
Oh,
And
that's
I
really
just,
great.
and fortunately for me, he had written tons of books. So I went from book to book to book until one day I went there and I found all the books had disappeared. And so then I went on a hunt looking for those books. Very fond memories, lovely. And they had this huge outside the building. They had these huge acreage, you know,
Okay,
divided by poplar trees. And
popular
under the
avenues.
poplar trees, they had benches where we used to go out for lunch. Even today, when I eat outside and I can smell the grass and the leaves and my lunch, it tugs at my heart because it reminds me of, of,
Nostalgia.
having the lunch used to be sent from home by my grandmother, and so that was that, yeah.
You were reading the books. Actually, I remember even our times, and I mean, I'm talking about seventies and when we were in the school. I think convent girls mostly they used to read MBs, Wilson Boone stories,
That was
American.
after I had a friend who I'm sure is watching this, and there was a group of girls that liked Mills and Boons and Lucy M. Myers and all these romantic Barbara Cartland and all that. And
Yeah.
that is why they got so irritated with me, because I didn't read any of that stuff. So they hid all these books.
What
But
about
they
Charles
loved it.
Dickens, Charles Dickens, Agatha Christie, and others?
Yeah. Agatha Christie, yes, my friend was very, I think she had every book that Agatha Christie had written. So it was sort of,
Jane
and
Austen
then,
also. Jane Austen
you know,
also.
Jane Austen, that was at college.
That's at
That
college.
was in college. We had
Only romanticizing
we
light.
yeah, we were young girls. We matriculated at 13.
Okay.
So it was and so that was lovely. And I have to tell you that there was a when you went up to the convent, went up the drive, uh, there was a huge round window in the parlor, as they used to call it. Huge
Wow.
round window, absolutely beautiful, with glass panes in a parquet style.
Ah, okay.
I mean, the nuns kept that place. So, and they had a cloister inside. It was
Okay.
a four walls and a garden inside with the way cloisters are. So, we put up plays and we had a sports day when the army band used to be borrowed, and we would do a parade, and Karan Singh and his wife used to come to take the salute and all that. So, and also, I must say, that we had Pandit girls and Muslim and Sikh and Christian, everybody, and the nuns had their prayer in the morning. They were
Mm.
not, they didn't flinch. We had to, in the name of the Father and all that, we did that, whether we wanted to join or not. But they
Mm.
had their daily prayer in the morning, and nobody threw a fit. It was a
Ah,
very
no stand. All that
tolerant time.
people were not conscious about. Communal
Yeah.
consciousness was not there. Communal consciousness came much later.
No,
In,
no.
yeah.
And so,
And I have also heard about this people when you got two photographs were there which I put on the promo. One is about your excursion and another is about a play. What is this play all about?
this play was when we were in college. This is by this famous Hindi playwright. Do you know? You have to forgive me. I can't remember his name at this time. But he has
Okay,
written many, many plays, comedies. And
comment.
this play was called Shri Bhulanath.
Bolana.
Yes. And it was a very, very funny play, which we did several times. And whoever came to the play literally fell off their chairs. And the reason for that was my best friend through school and college and university, who is just retired as a professor at JNU.
Oh,
And we were together for the longest time. I took the exam and she continued in academia. She, in my opinion, she was a natural actress. If she had followed that path, she would have really, she was so brilliant that, we just had to keep on. That after the play was done, she was like a movie star. She couldn't go anywhere. People just ran after her. She was so. One
what
of
was
the
her name?
funny lines in that, I'll tell you, is that this Shri Bholanath has come into money, I think. I don't remember the story correctly. And so
Okay,
now they are finding a wife for him, and who
okay,
is going to be his wife. So they bring all these photographs of various beautiful women for him to choose. Now, my friend, uh, she was Sri Bholanath, because we were a women's college, so the
yeah,
women did the men's parts also.
men's part.
So they showed him photographs and he said, नहीं ये नहीं ये नहीं, ये मुझे बहुत अच्छी लगी. तो वो जो वो म्यूजियम आया था, वो तस्वीर लेके कहता है, अरे मूर्ख, ये तो सुमित्रा नंदन पंत. उसके बाल थे ना लंबे लंबे, curly and all that. So this was just
Literally,
one of the hilarious scenes from that unforgettable play. But we
sure.
also did in college, we did Sheridan, we did Oscar Wilde, we did Shakespeare,
So
which
you
Mr.
did Oscar Wilde
Fu
as well.
directed. Brilliant. And we got critiqued. One Professor M.S. Vant, who was a legendary professor of English, Dr. Vant,
Dr. Watt.
he would critique our plays, Shakespeare plays, as if we were, a professional theatrical company. And he said once about a Hamlet that we did, and these are lines that remain in one's mind. He said Muhammad Sultan Want was his name, I think. He said that this Hamlet was prowling on the periphery of this is how seriously he critiqued it, you see. So we took ourselves very seriously as a result. Hmm.
You had this, ma'am. You had the family excursions like in Kashmir. They used to go to the Donga
Yes.
cruise, and then
Oh,
they'll go to the festivities and
yes,
cultural
yes,
meetings and
absolutely.
religious. Yeah.
First of all, let me tell you that even today, when I pray in the morning, I close my eyes and I think of going to Kheer Bhavani and
Ah,
my maternal grandmother having a dip. Hata bikare shran got. She would just take a dip in that, you know, thing. And when I summon her, and I think of those chinars, such a peace
still
descends upon me. Such a peace, even
very
today. So we
tranquil,
went to
very
Shir,
tranquil.
we went to Kheer Bhavani, and we went to, this Rob Bhavani's shrines. We went there. We observed all those. We did pan, so that was in the house, and of course
One was a
Shivratri
great
and all that.
festival. Yeah, storytelling
Yes,
about
my grandfather used to tell that story always. And at the end of it, he would say, "Yet par temman gav sore thik, tit par kirtan
it's a
Bhagwan."
sir,
Aise the
Bhagwan sir.
Sadi.
It was a
It
blessing.
was so comforting, a ritual repeated every year that it was
Annually.
really like a lifeline. At the same time, we went on
Yes.
excursions. We went in the lady who used to help with our rice used to come from the fields, and the lady who helped clean the rice, she had dungas, I think one or two or something like that.
Okay.
So we would rent her dunga, and go on a family picnic. My grandfather, my father, my uncle, all of us, and go all the way up to Nishad Bagh and I think even further, and then come back and wait at the Dulgate locks for the water to rise so that are you aware of that? That at
No,
the,
I don't know what is. Yeah, please, ma'am.
at
Yeah,
Dulgate, there was a lock
yeah.
because the water was at different heights.
They have
So,
different levels, different
yeah,
levels.
levels, right. So they would close
Aquafire. It's known as aquafire probably in English.
something like that. So then we would stop there till they lowered something and we could then go into the thing. And it was fantastic. While we went there, I remember, of course, fishing along the way, eating freshly caught fish. And my father and my uncle, I think my grandfather also used to jump in and swim
Swim.
there, and all the women would be beating their breasts and say, because we were very scared of water, considering how much water there is in Kashmir, we were very scared. And
Hydrophobia.
the women would be nervous wrecks till these people came back on board. And of course, my father being in the army, he would put beer bottles into a net or something and drag it alongside the
That,
houseboat.
oh,
And then they would have my father and his brother and all, maybe my grandfather also. They would have their beer and their whatever. So it was
fun.
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 Yes, yes. And also, I have to say that it's not only the boat rides. In the summer, the sons of these families, Jalal Kaul, Shamlal Dhar, and next door, and Sir Pandit Sarvanand over there, and their children had gone, joined work in other parts of India. So in
Okay.
the summer, they used to come home for the holiday. So very often in summer, we would, General Amarendra Kaul, who has passed away now,
Amrinder. I
Professor
don't know.
Jalal Kaul's son.
Oh, General Amrinder
Yeah.
Kaur.
His one son was General Kaul, and the other son was married to my aunt, Bhavnesh Kaul.
Okay.
And so we would send our man who we called Amma, whose real name was Ahmed, maybe
Am.
Ghulam Ahmed. We used to call him Amma. He was he
Am.
was lord and master of everybody. And we would send him, and he would hire the largest tongas, the tallest horses, and
Uh,
there would be like almost a caravan of 4 or 5 tongas that used to go for picnics to Nishad
Tonga
Bagh
ride.
with the
Tonga ride was a
samovar.
great thing. Great thing in
Yeah,
Kashmir. Tonga ride. Yeah.
with the Rogan Josh and all that stuff from home and samavars. And so it was, and of course, my grandfather also played the sitar. So, and he had
Ah,
a, yes, so he had a friend. They all had this friend called, I can imagine, it's just, I can't believe it. But he used to sing also. I
oh,
cannot imagine. I have forgotten. It's just a senior moment. I've forgotten.
doesn't matter.
So we used to have spread out carpets. Nobody can believe when I tell my children that this is what happened. They think I'm making it up. They can't believe. And add to that the beautiful backdrop of the mountains and the trees
Oh,
and the
amphitheater of nature,
oh,
nature's amphitheater. It's a
and
beautiful.
yeah. So
And the place like Herath was the one of the common festivals, in Kashmir. Herath,
most
Salam,
important, most
most
important
important, most
festival.
important.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I mean, it went on for a whole week, and puja and all that. And then at the end of it, my grandmother and I used to pick up the vatuk
Uh,
and go and, that water would be changed. But on the last day, she and I would walk around the house, and my grandfather and either Amma or somebody would lock the door from inside, and we would come from the front, and my
tuk tuk
grandmother
pushu,
used to say tuk tuk tuk, and
pushu,
my grandfather kuschu, and then she would say Rama bro anhat
ram bro.
danhat, sorry,
Beautiful.
and then the aate ki rotiyan banti thi. So that was, but there was a very interesting episode, just to tell you the cultural dissonance between Kashmir and the rest of India,
Yeah.
was that my father one year was, in the winter, then as they got older, my grandparents would come and stay with my parents, for the winter. And but the minute my grandfather saw a fan whirring in the ceiling, it used to terrify him. He wanted to go back to Kashmir.
Oh my God.
So somehow or the other, my father said to him that now you're here, Herath is in a few days. Why don't you do Herath here? So
Okay.
somehow he persuaded them to stay for Herath with the what do you call it, incentive that he would get the unit Panditji, who was a very big Panditji because it was a huge army
Oh,
unit. He said, I'll get the Panditji to come and do the puja, so you don't have to, it'll be done absolutely right.
okay.
So Pandit ji came very happy कि Brigadier साहब के घर में जाना है पूजा करने, and with all his things he came and did the
Attire and everything.
lamba puja करते to impress everybody. And then he turned to my grandmother and he said, Mata ji, a prasad laiye. So my grandmother very happily went and got this thali with rice, one raw fish, one something, one something. When that Patriji took
You
one
must have
look at
hated.
it and
It
he said,
hated.
try, and he ran. And so my grandfather had to do the prepan himself. He could not believe that on Shivratri he had been. So it just tells
Kashmiri, then two
we were a
Kashmiri
different,
Brahmins.
to use a pun, we were a different kettle of fish altogether from the rest of, we were not.
It was more of a geographical,
Yes,
the
it was because
location
of the geography. We could
yeah,
not have survived in being
without
vegetarians in Kashmir
this
for
chilling
centuries.
winter and all.
Before the planes came and the buses came and the cars came, we had to.
It was a closed one, closed, marooned kind of
Yeah,
a place at that time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those are wonderful times, and you have also spent some part of your life along with your father's postings outside. Did that thing had an impressions on your mind, tender mind in those days?
Uh, I went on a few postings with my parents because my grandfather somehow felt, that maybe my mother couldn't cope with three. You know how it was with three. So he wanted,
Okay,
and I am so glad that I stayed with them because I had a lot more things in common with them. But I did go with my parents to Bangalore and three or four. But the place that um, when I finished my studies and I was in Delhi, where my father was posted there, uh, that had a very interesting impact on me because that is how I got into the IS.
okay,
You see, staying with them, our next door neighbor upstairs, her her niece was coming from Chandigarh, and she was about my age. And she asked my mother, "Would your daughter like to meet her because she's younger and all?" And that was she was the one. She was coming for her IAS exam,
That's
and
very
she's the
nice.
one who I had no plans of getting into the IAS, but she's the one that
There are many
made.
sto- there are many stories about your generosity,
Oh,
academic excellence. Yeah, there are some comments. I'm just making it out, researching from the comments flowing in. And
really?
you were,
What?
yeah, somebody said that you were the heartthrob debater, not only
Yeah.
heartthrob debater of Kashmir University. What made you so different from the rest of the women, contemporary women? Tell us something about those. What was this heartthrobbing all about, and what
I
was this excitement and this spirit all about? This great spirit all about this.
I think that we had a very democratic atmosphere in the house.
Okay.
That you could say what you wanted to say. And in fact, I do remember that the first time that I read about Marxism in the college, you know, I was intrigued by it. And I came home and I gave Mrs. Nirja Matu and her friend who was visiting an entire lecture on Marxism.
Oh,
And they didn't push me off. They sat quietly and listened to the whole thing. So that is how it was that, if they had any questions, so one didn't feel deterred by debate. You see, we were encouraged to ask questions and we were encouraged to do all that. So I think that that was the one thing I would say. And as far as debating is concerned, I have to say that I would like to take the credit for being a good debater, but I had the best help. I had my grandfather, I had Principal Koul, I had Mrs. Mattu, and I remember that because they brought to the debating to my debates, not
machine.
only they were so logical and they had so much learning behind them, but they also brought in literature so that the language that I used was, for example, as I was telling you, one Tagore Hall debate. Um, Tataji, Principal Call told me, he says, "You begin with this line from Shakespeare. I come not to praise Caesar, but to bury him, or something like that." And that was it. That brought the house down. So that kind of, there's a little bit of showmanship also in debates. So
Yeah,
they
that
even
part is
taught me
there
that.
also.
Yeah.
It's an
So
interface
I
of
had, but I was not, to be honest with you, I don't think I was such a great debater, but if they think I was, then that's fine.
you can try,
So,
and the learning and the helping your people, the great people around you.
yeah,
The
absolutely. You know,
It is said. It is said that this basically the civil services was created by actual first branch of civil services were created by the British to facilitate their governance in India. ICS came in, and we have some Kashmiri like T. N. Koul was also an ICS. Subhash Chandra Bose left ICS after he qualified, and this is an old story. And these ICS people later on in the post-partition imbroglio, they saved this nation because of their expertise, their knowledge. They came at the support of the nation. Because I remember Patel asked me, Menon asked Patel that I want to leave now. He
hmm,
says that why? Earlier you were working for the British foreign rulers. Now you work for your own country. Now is
yeah,
the time to serve.
yeah,
So they became the greatest boon for the country. And later on, then the indigenous cadre of IS developed, and it is one of the
yeah,
most top class, elitist, illustrious cadre in India, which is governing such a great, complex country like India, such a varietal, such a diversified, such a social, ethnic. We live in different centuries. So
yes.
all things were dealt by these IS officers, brilliant minds around. You were the first women IAS officer from Kashmir, and certainly in those times, this was a very very rare commodity because the internet was not available, online coachings were not available, things were not so easy in those times, and just qualifying an IAS was not easy. Tell us a story about your inspiration. Did you aim for IAS earlier, your inspiration, and
Let
then you
me
are
just
qualifying IAS? Yeah.
sure, sure. I'll try what as I said, it was not on my horizon.
Okay.
I thought of myself as primarily a creative person. I was reading
That's
my
very
poetry over Radio Kashmir. when I was
Okay.
not even in college. I would go there and get paid 5 rupees for every poem that I read. There used to be a Bachon Ka program. Hello?
Yes, yes.
And yes, so there was a
Yeah.
Bachon Ka program on All India Radio in Radio Kashmir. And I would read my poems, and I thought that's it. And I was just going to be another Jane Austen or something like that. So I had no idea, that I would. But then, as it happened, when I went to Delhi and met this friend of mine, she was one batch senior to me in the IAS. We became such close friends, and she inspired me. She just not, I would say, she insisted that I sit for the examination. And so I sat for the examination, and lo and behold, I got it. And then, of course, it seemed, the right thing to do to join. And actually, now that I think about it, if I had stayed on, I did a lot of work, Jugalji, by the way, when I was in
Yes.
the IS. In fact, the lawyers in the Kachehri, I wanted to do something. I didn't want to just sit there and sign things and, enjoy the high life of the IAS officer. That's not my shtick. I don't like it. I want to see some accomplishments. I want to see something productive at the end of the day. So what I did was I set about, they were, it was so sad. And I'm sure it's still very sad for me to sit in the court as an SDM, or
Oh,
even, as the land revenue person, and find these poor, wretched villagers caught in the hands of these Peshkar and Ahmad, squeezing the lifeblood out of them.
oh my.
You know how they are. They would give them. 1 second, let me see. I hope I'm not. Huh.
Yes.
I would. They would. What is a tariq? Giving them tariq.
Tariq.
For if there's a case,
Yeah.
तारीख दे देंगे अगली बार सो तारीख दे दे के खून
Tariq pe
उनका
Tariq.
तारीख पे तारीख और वो आते थे बेचारे गांव से. And one particular case was where the mother was a leper and she was a beggar. Or wo bechari, to save her, I just couldn't sleep at night. I used to call up my mother and said, I can't bear this thing. So then what I did was I went into all the rules and the regulations and found cases where the APP had not followed up. He had not, done his due diligence. And I consigned hundreds, if not thousands, of cases and freed those people. And I have to tell you that even the lawyers who normally are not very sympathetic to the, you know, people that they represent, they also told me that you have cleared a long, dark tunnel. These people are free after years. So I got some satisfaction from that. Uh, but in
It was at Allahabad. It was at Allahabad.
I was at Allahabad and then I was SDM Lucknow.
Okay.
And but in retrospect, uh, as it happened, the IS kind of changed its color from that post independence that you are talking about to
Yes.
it became less of a colonial power and more of a developmental agency and all that. So I think if I had
Indigenous.
stayed, I would have probably been quite useful in women's issues and this and that and the other. But I always wanted to have a family. I wanted to have children. I wanted to get married, and have a home. And I thought that was my thing. I would be at home and I would,
This
write. That was my aim.
I'm going to ask this question. Certainly, I was coming down to this question. You were suddenly you qualifying IAS and then becoming serving IAS, as you said that you were SDM Lucknow and Allahabad. Your sensitivity was, you were. It was very difficult for you to cope up with the ground realities because there was a literature inside. There was a sensitive soul inside and you wanted to do something productive. But at the same time, one fine morning you get married and then you suddenly quit this IAS, Indian Administrative
No, I
Service.
didn't. No, I have to correct you a little bit. I didn't one fine day get married. I was, as a cousin of mine said, that
Yes.
I would never marry a woman who was in the IS. So I had some difficulty finding a husband, to be honest with you, who was willing to take me on. You wanted me to be honest, so I'm telling you. So when I finally
Really?
found somebody who I liked and he was willing to marry me, I kind of jumped at the opportunity, you
So
know.
it was a love. It was finally the
No, no,
love.
it was a no, no. It was an arranged marriage, which, by the grace of
No,
God,
no.
turned
It
out to
may
be.
be an arranged marriage, but there was something of a liking in that.
Yes, of course. I was,
Yeah.
we were in my batch in the IAS. We were six girls and 95 men, none of whom I was willing to consider. So here comes this Kashmiri fellow, and
Okay.
I think, okay, he's the guy. But the only problem was that he was in America. So I didn't have any qualms over, because I think basically at the heart of it, I was already very, sort of disillusioned, because whenever I used to say, why can't we do this in the villages? I had 370 odd villages in my jurisdiction.
My God.
And when I would go there, why can't we do this? Why can't, at that time, they were, the IS was not that forward looking and that, what do you call it, willing to adjust and all that. They were still stick in the mud. They were still behaving like,
Colonial,
the
colonial, talking to the
leftovers
colonial.
from the British Raj. In fact,
Hangover.
I remember I had gone to one village with my DC on a tour, but I did the whole thing. Let me tell you, in the IS, I would be on the, I was a magistrate at the Ardh Kumbh Mela. I did winter tours where I camped out in the villages for a whole month in a tent, which I don't know how I would have been able to do that today, but I did. I did everything. My mother, of course, had sleepless nights, but I did the whole thing. And I
Oh,
remember we went to a village where there was a scheme from the United Nations or something to provide nourishment to the villagers. So they had given them some seeds to start a fishery. And those fish were just in this UP village. They were rotting, and there was such a smell, because UP people don't eat fish. They are vegetarians. So it was this kind of, disconnect that I thought I could do. But so when my husband came along and we decided to get married, I was quite happy. But I didn't immediately leave. I wanted to wait a little bit. So I thought I'll take leave of absence and then go and get a PhD.
okay.
And I joined one of the best colleges in America for that. And then I'll get my PhD, and then I can go back and I can teach or something like that. But you know how it is, life. You have children, then you have to, things change. Yeah.
Well,
So
that's a wonderful, love for the children. Yes, certainly, certainly, certainly. People definitely will ask and keep on asking this question that, suddenly from an illustrious career of IAS, how is it looked outside?
yeah.
An illustrious career of the high profile, and here
I
it is
think it's
from,
I think if you are I think if you are into power and being illustrious and having wielding authority, I'm not that person.
you are. Yes, I can understand. You're more of a Vairagi, ambivalent and easygoing. Yeah.
I like literature and art and harmony and peace, and I'm not so I think that way it was not a bad. I think if I had stayed on, perhaps I would have been more useful than I was at that time. Because the IS has taken a different turn now. They are got their nose in everything. So
Now it's a
yeah,
different, altogether revolutionized. Everything is changed now.
yeah.
They
But
are
it was a
more
wonderful experience
great
to
experience.
go to the academy, the 4 years that I spent, all the stuff I learned, about India and the villages and the people, and it was just, and my colleagues, they were all just wonderful. I'm still in touch with them. By the way, 1970 batch, right?
Yeah.
And every year when I go back to India, our batch has at least one lunch a month, and I'm always included in that. And when I go and have lunch with them, they behave as if I've never left.
Okay.
So yeah.
And that's how,
They're all retired now. All of them have retired,
it's a great to be in such a great institution and learning and training of the country.
Yes,
And certainly,
yes,
whatever we may say, but IAS is the ultimate rescuer of this country. These people are dealing with the chaos of the country.
it
They have,
is.
they have, they have,
Oh,
they have post independence. Everything is done by the IAS. Of
absolutely.
course, they are supported by the lower cadres and other cadres, but
Yeah.
IAS has the.
IS is one. It was the this is what it was in Britain, because the government would rise and fall and rise and fall. The concept of the permanent and neutral civil service is was the backbone of the government.
Yes.
Your civil servants in England were supposed to be completely neutral and apolitical. And it was not something that, it was not like the American spoil system, where when the president went out, all the bureaucrats went out with him. The British civil service was permanent and neutral and continued through all kinds of governments. And that is what the IS fashioned itself after. It was not,
Yes.
I don't know how it is now. I hear stories, but apparently, they are, most of them are still quite objective and neutral and keep the country going.
No, that is there. That's there. The neutrality is there, but yes, the contemporary mind is very intricate. So those things bearings come
Yeah,
upon in everything that only IAS. But
yeah.
IAS still, I feel IAS is still. You see the country, the in Indira Gandhi's time, how many riots used to happen? Every town had a riot, and who was dealing with it? It was IAS civil servants,
I
IAS.
was,
Yeah,
I have dealt on my
dealing
first
with such
day in
horrible things.
Allahabad. The first day in Allahabad when I joined, I was in the control room at the Allahabad Chowk because there was a communal riot there. And I had
My
led
God.
such a protected life on Exchange Road. But
Yes.
fortunately, my city magistrate was just a very wonderful person. And he sort of guided me through the whole thing. Yeah, it was, and they trusted us. They
Yeah.
trusted us. For me, Jugalji, to go out into the villages at night, gather all the village folk, and advise the men to get vasectomies. Can you imagine? And how much respect they had.
Oh yes.
I don't know how it is today, but I found this thing, I have to say, that a woman in a position of authority in India is acceptable compared to other countries.
Yeah,
They-
it's because it's in our legacy. We treat every river as a female. We treat every goddess as a female.
yes,
Goddesses are
because
there.
our most powerful goddess is a female.
Is a
So
female.
I benefited from that. Otherwise, for me to go, a young girl telling people that, you have to have family planning and all that, but it was full of respect. They would just listen. Hmm.
Those certainly. And then finally, just before qualifying for IAS, you were in the Lady Sri Ram College. You have
Yes,
also been there as a teacher, as a
I
faculty member.
thought,
There is something about that's also a great institution. We also want to know about
oh,
it.
yes. Well, uh, I was. I was working in a temporary job as a research assistant at Sapru House or something, and I saw this advertisement for a professor of political science. So I decided to apply for it. So I went for the interview, and the interview went off okay, and I had a little discussion. And then I asked the other people who had come for the interview, where had I had gone to Jammu and Kashmir University and Women's College, and we know that compared to the other major universities, the standards were a little different, right?
Yeah,
So I
certainly.
asked this woman, she was from Presidency College, Madras, someone was from Presidency College, Calcutta, first class first, somebody. So I told myself, मैंने कहा ये तो चलन मियोन कशीर यूनिवर्सिटी हुन की best should stop वापस
You-
कर गत्सुन. So I didn't stay for the results. I went home.
oh my God.
And there my parents said, what happened? I said, सवाल ही नहीं है, मैं तो कहाँ वो, ये वो. As it turned out, I was the one they had selected, and they were looking for me, and they couldn't find me anywhere, and they were going to offer the job to somebody else. So
Oh,
then I taught there for 1 year.
How was the experience, the people around, and
Oh, it was just
culture?
wonderful, wonderful. But because of the education I had had in Kashmir and all the people that I never felt in any way that I was lacking anything. I was up to the task.
That's the greatness of your family and the environment and your parents and
And
grandparents
Kashmir, and
in Kashmir.
Kashmir.
Kashmir,
You have
certainly.
to give Kashmir the credit that being a small valley, it had such good educational institutions and opportunities. So,
You moved to US immediately. I mean, after your marriage. I not should
yes,
not say the word immediately.
yeah.
Tell us about your initial days in US. I mean, it's a cultural. In those times, it was 70s, 74 is a very
74, 74, I got
74,
married. Yeah.
long, long ago.
A
I mean,
long
in those times, even US was going through a recession. At the time was not that. I don't know how it was
No,
for
it
the.
was, the thing is that I had, first of all, it was a new country. I had been abroad. I had been to Switzerland on a holiday, but I had never lived abroad. So it took some time to get used to it. But in the meanwhile, I had my first child. So when a child is born, it just completely takes all your attention. And
Certainly.
then the child draws you into the society. And the child, she helped me, my children helped me get assimilated into American society. And I
Correct.
have to say that America very often gets bad press because American people don't really meet everyday Americans. They see the American foreign policy, they see this and that. So they have been so welcoming and so touch wood, by the grace of God, they have, it has just been uh, you know quite
Generous.
something. Yeah. And also, I started writing. Then my first book came out,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then the second. I joined Bryn Mawr College for a PhD, and halfway through it, unfortunately, I left it, but I made up for it by writing books. Yeah.
Yes, yes. We're coming to that chapter now. You started writing, I don't know when. You wrote poetries in your school times, and that was also
Yes.
broadcasted. You were also a broadcaster for a small period of time.
Yes.
And then, I don't know, maybe after 18 years of your migration to this place, US, Princeton, you finally wrote your first published work,
Yeah,
Curries,
there's a
Curries.
reason that I wrote a cookbook. There's a reason for that, for the fact that, first of all, we had, I think, in my grandfather's house, the most outstanding cook whose recipes are used by everybody, even today. I mean, he was just so I had all the recipes. And also, we were very fond of very good eating, like all Kashmiris.
Like,
And so when I came here, I I would feel very nostalgic and homesick and all that. And I remember once when I was expecting my first child, I just felt so homesick that I went and bought mutton and gogje, and I made gogje soon for myself, just to feel as if I'm back in Kashmir. So also then in the meanwhile, the friends would come into the house and eat the food and all that. Now, this could I have this recipe? Could I have that recipe? Could I have उस जमाने में इंटरनेट नहीं था, प्रिंटर भी नहीं था मेरे पास शायद. तो मैंने कहा जो मैं इतना इनको लिख लिख के दे रही हूँ, why don't I just put all the recipes down together? Just give them a writer for them, for my friends. I wrote a manual, beginner's manual for Indian cuisine, and I put it together. And as it happened, my next door neighbor in Princeton was a British ex-army colonel
oh,
who absolutely, he and his wife, they were just, I mean, so thrilled we were next door to them. He was the president of a publishing company, of Reed Publishing. So he went and took my cookbook. He went over it with me, by the way. He was so interested in Indian food, and he helped me with little editing and this and that. And then he took it as a training exercise for his
oh,
people to print. And that was the beginning of Curries Without Worries. But it received, as you know from the thing, it was well received, and
Well received. There were great reviews about this book.
I took it into 9 printings, and then it was bought by Warner Books, and now it has come back to me, and all my relatives, all my friends, their children, everybody uses it. So it was a useful little book. Mm.
Nirja Professor Mattu has also written some book on the cuisine.
She has written a real Kashmiri cookbook called Sal. She has
Sal,
written,
Sal.
it has got authentic. I mean, my book is just a beginner's.
Yours is, I mean, it deals with the all cuisines in India or just the Kashmir?
My book, Curries Without Worries?
Yeah, yeah.
No, it is really, it's the introduction is the most important part. It explains at that time when I wrote it. Today,
Hmm.
Indian cuisine is everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
There was at that time one restaurant in Princeton. Now there are 40. You see?
Yeah, that's what Jivan
So
Jutsi told me other
people
day.
they were very mystified. The books on Indian cuisine were very, snobbish. They were written by Shanta Rama Rao and other people who were kind of looking, who made it into even more mysterious and complicated, and perhaps they had authentic recipes. Nobody would dare to try it. So I thought, why don't I? This is why I titled it Curries Without Worries.
Well, that's
So,
great. You know, I mean, I think that it is being said that because people who have read your books, I really want to read this Tiger Ladies. But people who have read your books, they said that you are a very good prose writer.
oh,
Uh, I, yeah, I want to just ask one thing about the evolution of this author within you. When did this spark and desire to write actually overwhelmed you? Did you follow any method in writing, or it was
uh,
inspired by something else? Yeah.
not really. I mean, I'm feeling rather embarrassed talking about myself all the time, but since you have asked me the question, I always wrote. I remember even at the convent, the
Yeah.
nuns said, write a paragraph on anything. And you know how they say, write. So some people wrote, my favorite dog, my this and that. I wrote a piece about the barber who used to come to our house. The barber used to come to the house to cut the hair of the men and all that
Yes,
those
yes, yes.
days.
There was a time like that. Yeah.
So I wrote, I think, a full page about the barber. And Sister Loyola, who was my teacher, she read it. Next thing I know, she has called the mother into the room, and the mother has read it. And one very ferocious Sister Ignatius, we used to call Agni Mata, she also read it. So I said, but being Irish and not wanting to make me feel very important, they didn't say anything to me that you are a good writer, nothing of the sort. But I had the instinct, I always wrote, and poems and this and that. And then even, I think, so I always wrote. I think I always wrote. But I have to credit Mrs. Nirja Matu,
Yeah.
actually, with, she had read, she told me that the letters you write, they are interesting. I don't know what the other writers have that you don't have. Why don't you write? But that's how Tiger Ladies came to be.
Okay. Later. Yeah.
So I have to give her the complete credit for that. She said,
So
but once she told me that there's nothing that the others have that you don't have, then I felt confident enough to write the Tiger
So you
Ladies.
know, you were. I think you have explained that it was you were always writing. It's not that you
Yes,
started writing late. You were always writing, but there must have been some change in the style and some change in the presentation.
you're right about that. You see, let me tell you that, like all non-fiction writers, there is inside me a fiction writer screaming to be let out. And it's not happening. I have so much respect for people who write fiction because you read a novel and you say, oh, that's a nice one. You know, a writer of fiction is more or less like a little god because you create a universe, you create characters,
Great
and those
characters.
characters have to have integrity that lasts through the book.
They have the
So
elasticity. They have the all dimensional
everything,
characteristics.
they have to be credible and believable,
Yeah.
so I have mainly written non-fiction, which I must tell you seems by the grace of God to come rather easily to me. I can just sit down and I can, I've been writing for the Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, and, seminar and everything. But all the time, I feel that before I die, I should write a small piece of fiction. So it's not happening.
Actually, you are basically. We'll come to that on the third when we talk about the third book. Come with me to India. Is it a travelogue? What it is all
It
about?
is basically a response to the misinformation and, rather, in a way, lack of information
About India.
that my girls suffered when they went to school.
Oh,
They would say um, all kinds of how it is they didn't really at that time. Now things have changed. Now Bollywood and, cricket, we are all
oh,
over the place.
yoga is
And
ruling the world. We
yes,
are the
we are
Sikh
now,
guru,
but
Vishnu
at
guru.
that time that was not the case. And so I wanted to arm them with the basic information about their country. And that is why I wrote Come With Me to India. It's basically just the bare facts. What is this? What is this? And then the I think the best part of the book is that one third or two third or half the book is a chronology of events from ancient times to today. Should they want a reference. What about Alexander the Great or something? So it was basically written for my girls. And I think that it helped them because, you know, they were able to answer questions that people would ask them, you know.
I mean, it has something to do with the Macaulay. That education system that was imparted, and now we are opening up our ancient literature is coming up. Researchers are coming up now. People understand how wonderful country it was. I mean, thousands years ago. Anyway, people is now it takes time to people to open up to a particular civilization. People they
Yes.
think that this was the land of snake charmers, although snakes exist across the globe, and every country there are the charmers, snake charmers.
I must say now, because of high tech and Silicon Valley and
Yeah,
Bollywood and Indian cuisine, India is everywhere. The top CEOs here are Indian.
Indians.
Everybody's Indian. Everybody's Indian. I'm surprised there has not been a backlash, because every time you turn on the TV, there's some Indian
But
guy
they are
talking.
very Indians are very docile. They are very adjustive. They are hardworking. They are low profile.
Yes,
They are
mostly, yes.
magnanimous. So
Hmm.
that's why I mean they don't get in the stiff
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
local
yeah, yeah.
population.
Yeah, I think that you're right about that. I'm just going to check and see. I don't want us to be cut off in the middle of our conversation, because there's
Nothing
no,
will happen.
no,
It's
there's
going on
enough
well.
battery. There's enough battery. Yeah.
Your memoir book, The Tiger Ladies on Kashmir, is a very acclaimed work of yours. It's, in a way, anecdotal, biographical undertones. Uh, I mean, there are a number of things in it. I mean, I saw the excerpts; they are very, very attractive. I mean, it could catapult anybody's attention. And you are talking about probably it is in this book. You are talking about when in Safa Gadal, women used to walk back to their homes after attending a marriage during the night. Even during the night, it was so safe, and so they were all giggle around and move around so safely and with
Oh my
heads held
God.
high. I mean, it's more of a biographical memoirs. Tell us about this. This is a wonderful book. I mean, very popular. Everybody talks about it. Everybody appreciates it.
Uh, it really is. I think that also it resulted from
Yes.
watching the events unfold in Kashmir and the sorrow that I felt for the loss of the valley as I knew it. And I thought that nobody has, every time you read about Kashmir, it's about killing, about Mujahideen, about Pakistan, about army, and about all kinds of mayhem, which was so foreign to us. What about the life we had? So I felt, that I must write it down and archive it, so that nobody can say that this life didn't exist. You know, particularly with the Kashmiris leaving the valley, if
Yeah.
there was no record, anyone could say, "Oh, they were never here." You know.
Yes.
So that is what prompted me, and also I think that's that kind of, I enjoyed writing it, and you know, so what can I say? I hope people enjoy reading it.
You can talk about some aspects of this book. How, what are the pages? How many pages have the book has?
Oh, I don't know. Let me see. I have a copy here, hardcover. This is the American Tiger Ladies.
Are, wow.
This has been chosen by the Beacon Press editor here.
Okay.
She is the one who chose this cover, which I thought was fantastic. So
It's
this
anecdotes about your own family women, the social
it
in the
is
society,
no, it's not only about women. It's really about everything, about
everything.
Kashmir, about what was happening, the earliest signs of trouble, and all the adjustments and all we had to make. Now this hardcover has 218 pages. It's not a very big book.
Okay,
It's
two
not a
hundred
very
and eighty.
218, 1 8.
That's a good amount of. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a,
not a very, very big book, but so
so I people this is one of the most acclaimed books, and this probably is one of the most popular books. I mean, there's a problem nowadays. People, especially contemporary times, the book reading habit is going off, and because of these gadgets and all that. But yet your book survived. Tell me about its economics. I mean, how was it
oh, how
sold?
much money did I make?
No, not money, not
Huh.
money. What number was sold? What was its readership? Yeah.
To be honest with you, there was, I can't give you the exact number, but there was the first edition, that's the hardcover that I just showed you.
Yeah.
And then because it was selling very well, they came up with the paperback edition in America.
Okay.
And then it was published in England. I mean, it was, yeah, published in England, also in two editions there. And I had to go, to England. They asked me to come there, and I was interviewed by in that place. I forget the name of that BBC building, by Radio Scotland, Ireland, Wales, BBC. All these places about the book. So it was, it got very favorable reviews even in British magazines. Then it
Okay.
was translated into Polish and into uh, Hebrew for Israel. And
Israeli.
then there
Yes.
was one other translation, the Dutch. There was a Dutch translation also.
So
So
they
now I
dragged it.
don't know the exact number of books that were sold. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't think that this is, I got a good advance from these people,
Oh,
but it was not one of those books that millions of copies have sold. I have to be honest,
okay.
because the area of interest is not, I think also because it's not a very contentious book, it's
Okay.
not accusatory, it is not filled with hate and venom. It's just my,
It's
like
not
your program,
subjective.
it's just nostalgia. Just so if people have read it, they've read it for more for the writing than for the, you know contents, I think. But I'm quite happy because my job was to describe the life we had in all its facets, and I've done that.
You uploaded that.
Yeah,
You have
forever,
released it.
forever, forever. Once, that's the thing about a book. Once you put it in a book, it's forever. Huh.
I want to know one thing. I want to ask you one thing, because it's a biographical and memoir based. Somewhere down the line, these memoirs, whether it is an travelogue memoirs, whether it is a cuisine memoirs, or whether it is about this other memoirs, I mean, it is direct some correlation with the fiction. We can't say that it is not disconnected with the
That's a
fiction,
very astute observation. Very astute. Can I tell you why?
because you
Because
create it is not
there's that,
exactly
as
the
I
same
told you, that
replica.
tiny
Yeah.
little fiction writer dying to come out all the time. So while I was writing the memoir, I told my agent, my literary agent, I said, I'm writing a memoir, but I love to fly off the page and go off. And she said, that's perfectly fine. I said, but if it's a memoir, she said, no, your book belongs to a genre called the literary memoir.
Literary
And
memoir.
I had never
Quite
heard
a
that.
jump.
Well, that was it. That
That is a
gave me
huge
the
jump.
license to write. But of course, it's based on real facts, you know.
That's the truth. That's the truth. Actually, when you replicate a character, even from your own life, it has to be given the wings. It has to be
Yeah,
polished. It has to be chiseled.
it has to be made readable. Otherwise, why would anybody
Why
bother,
would
you know?
anybody read?
And I have never seen life in black and white. One and one have never made two for me. There's always
Yes,
something else. And I
life
think
is not black and white.
that is the that's what life is all about, you know. So you're absolutely right that while writing the memoir, it was all very factual and everything, but I took flights of fancy. Yes, there's no question. I'm
The
not going to.
Larry Collins and Dominic Lapper, they wrote political fiction. They wrote in the fashion of a memoir. I mean, they distributed all the sub subjects, whether it was Freedom at Midnight or the O
Mhm,
Jerusalem or Is Paris Burning. I
mhm.
mean, they had this whole style. They created this whole style. The,
Yes.
like killing up Gandhiji, two Brahmins from Pune, and then they
Yeah,
created.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's like that. These things already people who are trying it since long, but then again, you have
Yeah.
this whole iteration. Tell us something about you were very much, I mean, into Wall Street Journal. You write many
I have
articles.
written many pieces for them and on varied subjects. I had gone 1 year to Kashmir and I stayed with, you know, Mr. Vijay Dhar, who's a relative of my
DP
aunt's.
son, yeah.
Huh. And I was so impressed, you know, that how he is holding fort there in Kashmir, has set up this absolutely magnificent school. Not an easy job. It's a diplomatic marvel what he has done there.
Yeah.
And then to see 100 yellow buses with DP Dhar,
Memorial.
DPS, going all over traversing the countryside. So I wrote a piece about that, that how this scion of this family who has played a part in Kashmir's history earlier, you know, his ancestors, not. And there he is holding fort, you know, doing this thing. And so that was one piece I wrote. Then did a couple of reviews of cookbooks for Wall Street Journal. Then I also reviewed Salman Rushdie's Shalmar the Clown.
Oh, that's
I reviewed that for the Wall Street Journal, and I can't remember now. You know, it's
no, it doesn't matter. I mean,
Los
you are
Angeles Times has actually Los Angeles Times has a very serious food section. Now I don't know if they still have it or not, but I wrote a piece for them on the on a wedding banquet in the
oh,
Kashmiri Pandit family. And it was all, you know, anecdotes and stories. And also, then, of course, I gave them the recipe. I could not believe that it was as if I was a doctor on call. For 2 days, the chefs kept calling me, should we cut it like this? Should we? I said, my God, these guys are, you know, because they have very serious cuisine readers, you know.
yeah.
So I'm quite
It's
fond
a
of that
very
piece that I wrote
wide
for them.
parameter industry now. Sudhaji, ma'am, I have seen your paintings. To me, as an onlooker, they are very nourishing. They have this sense illumination, and they're wonderful. I don't know when did you open up to this art of painting, but certainly I would like to say your series, the Pundits at the Nightfall. Is that the right
Pundits
title?
at Nightfall. Pundits at Nightfall.
Pundits at Nightfall, and
Nightfall is, of course, you know, symbolic of darkness
of
descending.
1990s,
Yeah.
1990s. Yeah,
No, nightfall, darkness descending. No
darkness.
particular time period, but yeah,
But it has been going all along, you know. Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, I really want to know what this series is all about, and if it is about the kind of a emptying of the civilization from a land. But then it's gay. It's not pathetic. It's not tragic. It doesn't look tragic. It looks very fine, very different color.
You see, I don't think that hate and anger can achieve anything.
Right.
I could be shaking my fist at God all the time and saying, why, why? There are many ways of conveying your pain. And if the person has to understand and empathize, they will do it. And I didn't have any, I'm not a confrontational person. I'm not a contentious person. And I just said, I have to somehow get this out of my system. So I started doing this series called Pundits at Nightfall. And I have to say that I was influenced by this Jewish artist who had portrayed, the Jewish shtetl in Europe, where these little places where the Jewish people were confined.
Yes.
And you know what? You have to forgive me. I can't believe I can't remember his name, but
Second
anyway,
World War.
everybody will
During
know.
the period of Second World War. You're talking about Second World War,
Second World War, yeah, just around that. So he had
Germany
made
and other
these
countries. Yeah.
paintings of
Holocaust
these,
times.
huh? Of,
Holocaust times.
yeah, but before that, I suppose, when the pogroms and all that started. In any case, even before the Holocaust, the life for Jewish people was very tough, na?
Ah, it was
So it was very difficult. So he had made these many paintings in which there would be the shtetl, which is the, what do you call it, ghetto of the
ghetto.
Jewish people, but rising above it would be a man and a woman in bridal finery.
Ah,
They had transcended that, and they had flowers and there were birds. And so I just loved that theme of levitation, that they would rise, transcend their situation, and without it, and turn it into not a joyous but kind of uplifting experience. So I have to say that I owe that to that artist who I can't remember. I've, I don't know whether it's nervousness at being on screen with you, but I know who he is. I'll tell you in a minute. So, so that is what I did. I said, I all these paintings of the Pundits, show them rising, flying out of Kashmir
flying. Yeah. There's
with
one
the
thing.
things that are important to them, like a lotus flower, which symbolizes learning, or a kangri, and a child who's very reluctant because she doesn't understand why she has to go, and a father with Diwana Hafiz in his hand,
Yeah, the one Hafiz.
symbolizing our Sufi,
I
symbiotic
mean,
Sufi
Sufi
culture.
synthesis with the
Yeah,
Shaivism.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just they just kept coming to me, these figures, and I just kept painting them. And so not only have I there are the series of Pundits at Nightfall. There are a couple of other paintings about Kashmir also. There is one painting of a Kashmiri woman, a Muslim woman, houseboat woman, uh, with her two children. And, it's a very stark and kind of not a very joyous painting, let
Not
us
very
say. But I don't have too many of those. I have one of the paintings that I sent you showed how Kashmiri Pandit women used to go to Habakadal and talk to each other, where they are talking
Yeah,
with
yeah,
wearing parents and all that. And
yeah.
on the left side, that painting is called The Butcher's Dog. On the left side, if
Pujwan.
you see
There's a Pujwan. Pujwan.
on the left side, there's a pujwan, and below it is a dog sleeping, waiting for the bones. And there are these two butnies, talking to each other. And there's
Honest.
a Muslim man with his infant on his shoulder, going about his business. And then on the right side, which I didn't see, is another Kashmiri Muslim woman at a vegetable shop. So these are the scenes I saw growing up. It was when I went to Haba Kadal or Amira Kadal or Safa Kadal. This was how the inner city used to be those
Old city
days.
used to be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what I living in America, I have painted from memory, whatever I could
It's
remember.
your time. Your observation, and then it is recorded into your subconscious. You uploaded it, and is there any spontaneity also involved in it, or there is some intuitiveness also coming into your paint suddenly? You say
I'm
your dash. Yeah.
I'm it is spontaneous because where does it come from? I have no idea. When I paint, I don't know where it comes from, but it comes up. And but I don't know about intuition, but I suppose I do have some. I think it's memories. For example, when I do the parents of those butnies there, I think of Danna, my grandmother, and her red pocket on the right side with the cloth purse that was rolled up like this, and how long it used to take her to put her watercolor and all that, So these are, I remember everything in great detail. I never forgot anything.
That's wonderful. I mean, your paintings are very fascinating. I really, I mean, they're very illuminating. They're very positive. They take you to a very different flight. That's what my personal observation is. And as Pablo Picasso has said, art washes away from the soul dust of everyday life, and that should be the purpose of the art. Because unless and until what is there to burden up, what is there to burden up things, what is there to create more darkness, create more tragedies? You have to take these people away and to the lighter soothing.
Well,
It,
for me, I'm a free thinker in the sense that if you want to paint dark and you want to paint horror, go ahead. But this is not my thing. You know,
yeah, that's
how long have we been talking, Jugalji? How long have we been talking?
it's very routine. It's very routine on Sheetalnath conversation. We
No, but
don't
how
know.
much time have we
We
been
don't know
talking?
till we have flown over to many countries and continents. Yeah.
Because I'm worried about the battery going, and
Okay,
then
okay.
we'll be
We'll just
stuck.
finish it. For your
We should
battery,
finish it before the battery finishes us.
yeah, yeah. Had it been your battery, not a problem. Otherwise, my these shows go along up to 2 hours as
I
well.
know. I think we
Okay,
have to be cognizant of the
yes,
battery.
we'd like to close it down now.
Huh.
Tell me something about your, vibrant. You are a socialite also, probably in your own circles at the Princeton.
I'm a
Are you
very
have a
private
social
person.
circle? You are a
Huh?
social circle. You have a social circle.
I have lots of friends and of different types. I'm very non-discriminating. If I have friends, I'm friends with people who I like and who like me. I don't like people who don't like me. I don't I don't make friends with people. You have to, if you want to be a friend
You
of
don't
mine, you
waste
have to
time.
like.
What you do waste time. Life is very precious.
Life is too short. So I have lots of lovely friends and friends from childhood
Yeah.
and friends I've made here. And I will travel across continents to go and meet friends, and they will come and meet me. So I have, touchwood by the grace of God, blessed by lots of lovely friends. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So you were a very privileged person, and you still are a very privileged person. God has been kind to you. Wish you all the best. But
Thank
before you go, kindly, tell us something about any regrets of leaving IAS. Again, the typical question. Old.
Uh, as I told you, one regret is that if I had stuck it out, I would have maybe done something in social work or women's issues or although the winds of change have been so strong and I'm sort of very sensitive to these things, I don't know how I would have fared. I don't do well. I was brought up in love and affection and security. I don't do very well when there's hate and anger. That's not my thing. So I don't know how I would have done. I just
And
want everybody to love everybody. Life is short. Enjoy it.
There's no othering of the thing. Everybody is ours. Yeah.
We are all the same. So I don't know, but that too, I do think about. If I had stayed on, maybe I would have done. But I don't have any regrets as such because I'll tell you, as that lawyer said, I cleared tunnels of these case files that Jugal ji were smelling because they were so old. They were consigned and and those people were free. That's the kind of work I would like to have done, but I would not have been able to do it for much longer. You know.
Just in a lighter vein, have you ever taunted your hubby, "Sore with IS ba IS with Utadur America"? Have you ever said such a word to your husband? Please be free to tell.
I'll tell you very frankly, uh, I have never said that to him
Oh,
because
that's
I
good.
didn't do it. I didn't marry him as a favor to him.
Oh,
I married him because I wanted to marry him. You see, so
it was just in lighter vein. It
I've
was
never
in light.
held that stick over his head. We may have other disagreements, but that is not one of them.
That was in the lighter vein. That was in
Yeah,
the lighter vein to
yeah,
create a humor, Kashmiri
yeah.
humor. I mean,
Well,
that
I
was
mean,
all.
the thing is, you see, let me just say, in a clerk way, let me say that if he cannot see that himself, I cannot point that out to him.
That's it.
That's his responsibility to see. And I really don't think that it was such a big sacrifice because I've done what I wanted. I wanted to write and I wanted to paint and have kids by the grace of God, and that's it. Okay,
And
I think we better go.
you've done it so wonderfully. You tell me something. There is one question people are asking that where can we get this book, Tiger Ladies?
Amazon.com.
Amazon. They can buy
And
directly from.
buy a used copy, no problem. Buy a
Okay.
used copy because the new copies are like selling for an arm and a leg,
The paperback or the hardbound?
Any edition that you can get,
Okay,
just
that's
order
good.
it on Amazon.com. And,
Any
in fact, if it's not available, I'm sure that in India also on Amazon.com it's available.
yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah, it's freely
otherwise,
available.
write to your relatives in America and ask them to send it.
Everyone has a relative now in America.
Yes,
America is a great country. Ayn Rand always said she was a favorite. She wrote about America in We the Living and Capitalism. She always talked about America because she
Ayn
was
Rand.
so fed up with the Tsar Shahi and about
Yes,
the Russian imperialistical mindset.
yeah.
Anyway, you are in a great country. You belong to a great country, the great civilizations of the world, the great democracies of the world, and Kashmir is in our veins. And you have elaborated all your, nuances about the book, how you write, and it was a detailed, kind of a descriptive and a very informative session, very enchanting session.
And
It must.
thanks to all your viewers for taking the trouble to listen to my ranting and raving. And I wish them all the best. You know,
Any message you want to give before you leave the studio?
peace of mind, peace with others,
Live and let
onward
live.
and upward, light and bright. Enough
Arey,
of darkness.
thanks a lot. With
Okay.
that wonderful line, we close this session. Thank you very much, ma'am. It was a
Thank you.
privilege, a great honor to have you on this show.
It
We
was
really
my
loved
honor.
it. Everyone, I'm seeing there are a lot many comments coming on. They're so wonderfully relating with this particular conversation.
It was
Thanks a
my
lot.
honor.
Pleasure,
It was my
pleasure,
honor. Thank you for the
pleasure,
job you are doing. God bless you.
pleasure.
Okay.
Good luck. Thank you
Bye
very
bye.
much. Bye bye. So that was
Ho gaya?
Sudha Koul. That was Sudha Koul, the first women IAS from Kashmir, and she is an author of international repute. She has got wonderful books. She's a wonderful painter, and she gave such illustrious sketches about her life. She all reinvented the old memoirs. She went to the memory lane of reminiscences around, and it was a great to talk to her. I really loved this discourse, this conversation. I hope you all, everyone among you, also loved it. She was a great. I feel that she was herself a tiger lady who took a great decision while being in 70s, and now she's a successful lady who has been very, very wonderfully, who has raised her kids, her family. She loves her family, and she's doing wonderful things all around. So that was all for today. But before I go, I would like to say in this context, होश वालों को खबर क्या बेखुदी क्या चीज है होश वालों को खबर क्या बेखुदी क्या चीज है इश्क कीजिए फिर समझिए जिंदगी क्या चीज है Thank you very much. That was all for today. We'll meet next Sunday at the same time with another wonderful conversation, historic conversation. Thanks a lot and good night.